Hello, how are you? I'm well, thank God. Pleasure to be here. How long do we usually go? Excellent. And do you mind if in the introduction I talk about a little bit about my live streaming project that I've been doing for the last 4 years? Okay, excellent. And one last thing, if you don't mind, when I do talk about that, I would just like to show people my YouTube. And so the way that I would anticipate doing that is just changing my screen over and showing people all of my simultaneous live streams that they can be able to see from all of the different angles. Would that work for you? Excellent. Um, so we're going to do the first part on Primership, and then the second part on the Nephilim, and perhaps some Ezekiel, perhaps some Enoch. Is that correct? All right, sounds like a plan. Oh, is this live, by the way? Okay, excellent. All right, I'm ready when you are. I'm well, thank God. How are you? Most certainly. Most certainly. I was a skeptic, certainly at age 14, and really up until my early 20s, as someone who believed that which I would see in the media and understand that anything alien or UFO related is generally going to be considered as people with science fiction, or certainly fiction in general. And it was my belief, and I even debated people on this subject publicly, that aliens, if they existed, we would know about it. It would be a public event, and I basically did not dig very deeply into it. It was in the year 2000 approximately when the internet and internet speeds generally transitioned from the early 90s the internet text-based and then image-based into video-based, and many different opportunities were available, especially in the documentary realm, for someone who was once a skeptic to dig into this topic more and more. And it was in my viewing of Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project in 2008 that I really, for the first time, saw many different whistleblowers from all different backgrounds, military intelligence, people who work for the FAA, and even in the international community, talk about aliens and ufology and just humanity not being alone for the first time with such seriousness and such evidence that it opened my eyes. The Disclosure Project took place in 2001, specifically May 9th, 2001, at the National Press Corps in Washington, D.C. And so it was a few years afterward that I would eventually see the Disclosure Project, and it changed my life, absolutely, and made me recognize that, well, we may not be alone. It forced me to delve into different topics such as Bob Lazar, the alien abduction phenomenon, Philip Corso, ancient aliens, and recognize that humanity exists on Earth, but we may not be alone. We may have been perhaps guided here. Our evolution has been influenced, and this was certainly an awakening journey. At age 14, though, I was not aware of any of this. The internet was still in its infancy. I was more worried about school books and friends than taking on such a massive massive topics such as ufology, but it would be in the coming years that I would essentially wake up to this event, that we aren't alone, and take it with immense seriousness. And I would also say, I'd like to say, if I may, my last name is Rothschild, and yes, all the Rothschilds generally are related around the world, but I have no direct, or I should say, any type of direct connection that we have is certainly distant. We all do have certainly some common ancestors, but yes, I'm a regular person, probably like most of your listeners, didn't have any inside information into the ufology, so that I had to come about independently. Well, generally, I see them as being separate. When we get into the Nephilim, the angels, even Ezekiel's visions, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, these are different topics. Nephilim generally are referenced as mysterious beings mentioned specifically in Bereshit or Genesis 6, 1 through 4, often interpreted as giants or offspring of heavenly beings and our traditional source of this is biblical texts and the Jewish writings. Then we have angels, as malachim, divine messengers or spiritual beings who serve God's purposes. Again, Hebrew Bible, Rabbinical Judaism, and Kabbalah are our main sources for this. Ezekiel beings, the Chayot, the Ophanim, the celestial creatures that we see in Ezekiel's vision of the divine throne. These also come from the Hebrew Bible, specifically the book of Ezekiel. But then when we get into Gnostic beings, this is a later movement. These are complex spiritual entities with various Gnostic systems, often involving cosmic rulers, emanations, and a distinction between the supreme God and the creator. And we see this in later movement into the Common Era, generally the second to fourth century. And then Kabbalistic beings generally come about much later. They're more medieval Jewish mysticism. So we're looking at 1,000 years later. And these are generally spiritual forces, some angels, emanations, and levels of reality within the Jewish mystical cosmology. So generally, we see them as separate, or at least I see them as separate. And I would also say that there are different interpretations of what these beings are, but from my standpoint, and my research, and certainly my lens, are separate beings. Well, I'm skeptical of everything. I think it's always important to always ask questions and to never take anything as truth. But I feel that Prime said is stating what he believes to be true, that we aren't alone, that there are real Mars bases. He references in his book and in his interview that basically when you go to Mars, perhaps you need to go with not just theological or perhaps physical type of mentality, but also an archaeological um, uh, philosophy, and to go perhaps see if there are ancient structures there, which generally isn't discussed. His background is such that uh, he is really, from an American equivalent, someone who's like a joint chief staff member. He is, at one point, is one of the 24 highest members of the Israeli Defense Force. His background is extremely vetted, and there is some interest in if he's willing to make these claims and willing to say that the Trump administration is aware of them, that consciousness does not end. Certainly. Absolutely. Most certainly. Well, before we go there, which is certainly the main claim that he makes, are states that extraterrestrial civilizations exist. And from any member of the military or any member of the government to be able to make this claim certainly gets attention. States that advance extraterrestrial civilizations exist, that these civilizations have been observing humanity for a great period of time, and that humanity has not fully understood its relationship with them. And so once we establish that he does state that these are advanced beings, then he gets into the Galactic Federation. This is really the most certainly. His book is really an autobiography, and the key aspects of this are written in the epilogue. In the epilogue, there is reference into um, in the idea of the Galactic Federation that there are potentially 9 different species. It does not go into anything in terms of their look, their biology, whether they're the tall grays, whether they're the Nordics, whether they're reptilians, nothing like that, which I think many people wish that he would, if he had this knowledge. But from seeing his interviews and reading his books in translations and his reading his interviews in newspapers, I think he would have said it with feeling. He doesn't seem to be someone who's holding back on very much information. So to give listenership idea, we're looking at potentially, as he references, approximately 9 different species, but we don't have specifics as to their biology. It, and that's absolutely correct. Yeah, in the Jerusalem Post. No, it was not. He doesn't give any specifics. I don't know if he knows the specifics. doesn't even give a source of how he knows this. It just seems to have been absorbed in his experience within the Israeli Space Agency. But what he does say is that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations have organized into a cooperative structure. He describes this as a type of federation involving multiple civilizations, and he claimed that humanity had allegedly been interacting with this group. He also claims that there's some alleged cooperation with the United States and Israel, that the United States government has knowledge of these alleged contacts, that Israel was also involved in this relationship, and that the interactions involved attempts to understand deeper questions about the universe. Uh, there are also claims that he makes that other countries are involved, including Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and Japan, perhaps others as well, in addition to the United States. So it is not solely a United States-Israeli um, relationship. It perhaps may have to do with the more advanced countries of the world. And really, one of the things that he routinely states that the Galactic Federation said is that humanity is not ready yet. This became the famous headline that the aliens have asked not to announce that they are here. Humanity is not ready yet. Uh, the, the the argument that he makes is because of the possible effects that would happen with disclosure and its enormous consequences. Well, his lack of evidence is certainly a concern. And with immense and major claims that he makes require evidence. And so the lack of evidence is off-putting, certainly. However, this is someone who has basically said in their own words, I have nothing to lose. When he made these claims, he was 87 years old and had already won the highest awards in the Israeli government multiple times. As you had said, he's essentially the grandfather of the Israeli space program, the grandfather of the Israeli satellite program. And he didn't need the money necessarily. He was already a professor. He was already a contractor, already a lecturer. This seemed to be his opportunity to share what he potentially knew. And I think that's a really interesting uh, take, that he wasn't necessarily doing this to make a lot of money, it seemed. There are skeptics that say, hey, he was promoting a book, and he's trying to promote book sales to give the listenership of a timeline when this occurred. The book was published in November of 2020, and then the major newspaper article was published in December of 2020, and then subsequent English translations, specifically in the Jerusalem Post summaries, later in the month of December. And then he goes quiet, which in my opinion, is quite interesting. He did not go on the podcast circuit. He did not go on the show circuit. He was not pushing his book as many other people have in the past, which to me lends some amount of credibility that he was not just doing it for financial gain. In terms of uh, his mental state, he seemed to be in good conscience and not doing this for various reasons. He seemed to have his wits about him, even in the years after he has his wits about him. So it did not seem to be like he was having some kind of uh, psychological issue. He seems to have mental health when he made these claims and wanted to share what he allegedly knew with the world. And from my perspective, there's some credibility to that. Excellent question. Well, for the Donald Trump aspect of it, oh, go ahead. Most certainly. Well, from the Donald Trump aspect of it, you're absolutely right. I had claimed that Donald Trump was aware of the alleged extraterrestrial situation, that he had considered revealing the information, and that the alleged extraterrestrial supposedly discouraged this culture because humanity was not ready. Now, a question that I have, and this is before the White House press corps and just the media in general, if such a claim is being made, why not push this issue with the president? Did this occur? Is there something that you're not sharing with us? The topic of aliens, while so important, is not really discussed at the higher levels of the media, of the mainstream, that even these claims are made. So I was quite disappointed in terms of where is disclosure, from where is it going to come? I think there's an argument to be made that we are in a period of soft done many of the movies, certain films, documentaries, books, and other resources that are published are to prepare humanity for the understanding that we are not alone and what kind of potential public shock that could occur if it happens too quickly, perhaps social disruption, religious questions arise, political consequences, and just the difficulty in your average individual of understanding that there are civilizations far more advanced than humanity has a lot of baggage. In terms of the idea of soft disclosure, there are maybe potential arguments in here that we may never get the answer that we want, and that this will just be information that is applied to a certain element of society. There's that argument. There's another argument that states will continue to have soft disclosure until there's an event. And perhaps this is an event of aggression that one day there is a leader who is willing to talk about these subjects from a potential historical and in the modern age, a realistic standpoint that we need to handle this topic with maturity. And uh, of the of the philosophies, there's always the event that we may have some hard disclosure, um, a project movie type of event uh, where all of a sudden all of the television stations and all of your 24-hour media outlets and social media, there is just a switch that is flipped essentially that says it's now time that we prepare the world for the next epoch of, of really disclosure. And with this, there could be religious connotations to it. There could perhaps be a global government aim for this that has been hypothesized. So, from my perspective, I don't know when disclosure is coming. I just can say that, at least from polling, it seems to be, at least from an American standpoint, more than 50% of people believe that we're not. So, whatever soft disclosure is being conducted, it does seem to be successful because people are no longer willing to believe that it is punk or believe that is really not actually there. Now it gets into we get into specifics whether we believe aliens are here on Earth, whether the abduction phenomenon is real, and things like that. But from the grand level, the average person on the street, there is a more likely chance than not that they believe that we are not alone, and that was not always true throughout human history. Well, he discusses an alleged underground base on Mars specifically. So this is subsurface. He claims that this base involves cooperation between humans and extraterrestrial beings, specifically the United States government. He associates this base with American astronauts and representatives of the alleged extraterrestrial civilization. He states that within this Mars discussion and connected themes within the book, that it involves perhaps these future expansion of space and well, there's a possibility of archaeology beyond Earth, and as I mentioned earlier, that's why he states that there are some evolving scientific realms that aren't really explored, like off the world archaeology, perhaps, or xenobiology, the biology of perhaps species that are not Earth based, that he references, and really just the search for evidence of ancient civilization. In terms of what I would have loved to hear is perhaps about the alien base or the alleged alien base on Mars is more about its physical structure, how long has it been there, how do people get there. We don't get any of this information, which is unfortunate, but is somewhat par for the course within ufology. We get a little bit, and it leaves us to want more. And I would say that the claims of that he makes about Mars specifically are difficult for many people to swallow. There are some people who say, "Hey, I'm willing to go forward with Imashek's claims about the Galactic Federation, perhaps consciousness existing after death. But this idea of Mars seems to perhaps go against some of the modern physics that we have. He doesn't go into how you get there, what's the length of time, who's been there, what happens with these people once they go there. He leaves the people who have read his book and read his interviews wanting more, and we still don't have an answer as to what exactly is going on. But in terms of what you said, this is consistent with many people who have made these claims previously that bases do exist, perhaps on other planets or planetoids, and that perhaps there's some type of secret space agency that may exist or space program, and this would seemingly be a part of that. Well, it's if we are, no matter how great we think of humanity, we are not mature enough. We are not type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale, certainly not even close to type 2 or type 3, which is what these advanced civilizations may be, basically an infant. And that perhaps some type of extraterrestrial intelligence is to evolve, perhaps guided evolution, to be able to sit at that top table of a type 1 civilization. It's almost as if when you're a child and you're not yet ready to sit at the adult table, for lack of a better analogy, you're taught the different behavior that you should have and the maturity that is expected of you before you're given that opportunity. And perhaps some of these developments could be our association with nuclear weapons, or our association with global war, or our association with artificial intelligence. These might be tests to see how humanity is treating them. And in terms of, if we look at what perhaps other philosophers, other astronomers, cosmologists have stated, humanity is not even approaching that type 1 civilization yet. Within the next century or so, we may be looking at another millennium or two, to perhaps be at that type 1 where we basically are utilizing all of the energy within our home planet. But that doesn't mean that we're not moving toward that. And this guided evolution of an extraterrestrial intelligence may be helping to push us there. Generally, I think that's what Hamish means when he makes this statement that humanity is not ready yet. And he doesn't give a timeline when he says we will be ready, and he doesn't give any kind of standard, like once there's global peace, or once we're able to manage our energy levels, or once we're able to actual climate or any other type of verification is not given. It's just we are not ready yet, and the media ran with this statement, and certainly it's one of the more uh, memorable statements of Chaim made in 20. It seems as if it is. So there is a galactic federation and perhaps some kind of shadowy clandestine group like Fantastic 12 or some type of uh, group of humans that decision perhaps within intelligence agencies as disclosed. And then that information is then given to humans. I should say to government officials and the media and such. So it may be a three-tier galactic federation. So there's some kind of communication with some type of intelligent entity that is not disclosed, that is clandestine, that does keep this information classified, and then slowly the information is leaked into the government and media organizations. It depends on how humanity thinks that we would handle it and how the media thinks we could handle it. If there was major fear that was induced from the media, then people are going to be scared of it. But if it was handled in a calm and mature tone, perhaps people might be able to uh, to handle it with the maturity that it requires. I have taken this. It's not a perfect analogy by any means, but at least within the state of California, when people would say, what would happen one day if they ever made marijuana legal? When I was a kid, people would say, oh, there's going to be chaos in the streets and people will overturn cars and the government will immediately be overtaken. And that didn't happen at all, as we saw in the late 2010s, that once the decriminalization or eventual legality of marijuana happened statewide, it was just another day, basically. And the same could be true within the state of disclosure. Now, disclosure, albeit is not correct than the legalization of such a plan, but is a possibility that Bernie could handle the situation with maturity. What we would be unable to do or reverse once disclosure occurs is the idea of have we been reverse engineering different types of technology? Are some of the inventions that humans have given credit, are those perhaps reverse engineered technology? What happens in terms of who gets this type of technology? I see artificial intelligence as a tool, and it is a tool that certainly is accelerating human development and autonomy and robotics. It may be a tool that we've been able to um, receive or develop from reverse engineered technology, and it itself could be reverse engineered alien technology. It would almost as if, let's say, we were seated here with some type of guided panspermia, and alien extraterrestrial intelligence. You know what? Humanity isn't developing fast enough. Let's give them. Let's fast forward their development a little bit, and so we'll make sure that the right inventions are found or the right organizations are created in order to advance civilization much faster than we once would, much more accurately than we once would, and from an a higher efficiency standpoint, continued improvements. If this was something that aliens wanted due to um, their own desire for humanity to be a more advanced civilization, I could see that happen. I also could see it as just a, basically a necessary development that you would get within computing. So, given enough time, if you gave any civilization enough time with a computer, eventually they're going to develop artificial narrow intelligence, then artificial general intelligence, and then eventually artificial super intelligence. This might be an inevitability. So, in terms of could AI be an alien influence technology? I think it could be in itself, but also I am at least open-minded to the idea of Philip Corso and the idea that microelectronics, the transistor, and many of the other technologies that we have today may be alien influenced and perhaps reverse engineered, and thus the development that we have with AI today is necessarily also an alien influence development. So it could go both ways. We could have just the inevitable development from computing or aliens actually pushing this with different developments that we see. Within Judaism, generally, because we don't have one central spokesperson, the idea of humanity not being alone in the universe is a possibility. So there's no direct contradiction. For thousands of years, human beings have looked to the night sky and wondered whether Earth is unique or whether life exists elsewhere. And we have seen with the development of modern astronomy, the chances are that we may not be alone. And even rabbinical post-experts of the previous century have anticipated perhaps some type of alien disclosure occurring, and that this doesn't necessarily contradict with what we certainly know about our known universe. This would just basically be an addition, or we have to adapt perhaps to this type of disclosure. But there isn't something within mainstream centrist orthodoxy that says humans are alone and they can only be alone, and any other type of thought or anything outside of that directly contradicts what our central halacha or church law is. And especially in the more modern age and modern thinkers and modern Orthodox, generally, we are much more open-minded about this. We see disclosures perhaps being inevitable. And what happens then with with if we have disclosure? How does that affect us as religious people? Will we Absolutely, yes. Generally, the covenant is seen between God and mankind. So any other extraterrestrial entity is generally not uh, a part of that covenant. That doesn't mean that there may not be some type of agreement outside of what humanity knows. In terms of um, the theological possibility, there is no universal Jewish prohibition against alien life. There is an essential doctrine requiring for it to be the only inhabited world. And if there is a possibility or worldview that the universe contains many forms of creation, there is the opportunity that perhaps they are outside of what we know within the Hebrew Bible. There have been certainly throughout ancient and medieval Jewish thought that and philosophers who really explored questions about multiple worlds or celestial realms, the nature of existence. Into the modern age, most contemporary Jewish thinkers approach extraterrestrial life as a scientific question, a philosophical question, and a theological opportunity. Now, what would happen from a realistic standpoint if, let's just say, on television tomorrow, it was just announced that we're not from a religious standpoint, at least within Judaism, we would look toward our religious leaders and our rabbis. And we would ask, how is this interpreted? And generally, from my discussions with my rabbinic colleagues, to have our daily services, we would have Shakas, Mincha, Marav, our morning, our afternoon, and our evening services. We would continue to keep kosher. We would continue to do our best to be observant of Shabbos. Uh, so long as there wasn't some type of direct threat to us as a people to continue to worship in the way that we've been worshiping for over 5,000 years, then there isn't anything that would necessarily contradict what we've been doing. Now, there are other aspects that occur in terms of, let's say, we people in the world and perhaps travel with these people. Do we continue to document on a daily basis? Every what do you do when you're in low Earth orbit and you are literally going around the Earth multiple times a day? How many times do you document? These are questions that really weren't foreseen by ancient or medieval thinkers, and it's really would be what what do the Central Council of generally rabbinic leadership feel is best for us, but in reality, no one really knows. So there isn't a perfect answer to it, and humanity, or at least Judaism, would adapt to any kind of event that would occur. But that does not mean that people would not stop being religious immediately. It also doesn't necessarily mean that the religion can't adapt. Even over the course of the last 5,786 years of what is the known Hebraic calendar, we have had to adapt to different events, to different technologies, everything from certainly electronics to the internet, to computing, the internet, now AI. How does this affect us as a people? And eventually, there was some kind of event that, hey, um, aliens exist and we're not alone. Okay, well, how does that affect me? Does that mean that I'm going to have dinner with them? Does that mean that it's going to change society? Humanity would adapt in the same way that Judaism had to adapt to the pandemic, where we weren't allowed to meet in person. We would have virtual services, virtual classes. We would adapt in the exact same way. So if that meant that we weren't available to meet in person for a period of time due to alien disclosure, we would adapt. Judaism is an adaptable religion and will continue to be an adaptable religion even after alien disclosure occurs. Now, when it does occur, does that mean people will be as religious as they once were? I see the religion itself as a thing into a more humanistic framework, especially over the course of the last few centuries. It's not as rigid as it once was. There are rigid aspects of some communities, most certainly, but in general, there's been more flexibility, and I think that flexibility will continue to occur. So in terms of Ezekiel, we're talking specifically about Ezekiel 1. And to give some people just an understanding of what we're referencing, this is a vision. And I think personally that this could have been a vision. So interpret Ezekiel's real and his vision as a UFO or some type of UAP, which I can't counter that by necessarily saying that's not true. What Ezekiel describes is four with fire and light, and four living creatures. These four faces are human, lion, ox, and eagle. They have wings. There are wheels within wheels. These are known as ophanium, and a brilliant throne-like structure. And then there's a figure that is having an appearance of a human surrounded by radiance. Some modern writers interpret these details as a spacecraft or mechanical wheels, advanced technology, or non-human beings. And this interpretation has become popular in many ancient astronaut theories, especially in modern pop culture. Supporters of this ancient aliens philosophy or theory see wheels within wheels. The exact quote in Ezekiel is their appearance and their work was like unto a wheel within a wheel. And they suggest this is something like rotating machinery, propulsion systems, spacecraft components. The traditional interpretation, the wheels are the heavenly beings representing Hashem or God's omnipresence and movement throughout creation. There is fire and brightness. Ezekiel describes fire moving, glowing metal, flashing lightning. Ancient alien theorists compare this to engines or energy fields, advanced technology. Traditionally, we interpret this as divine revelation, perhaps some type of symbolic descriptions of spiritual reality beyond human comprehension. The idea of the living creatures. Some ancient alien theories interpret these living creatures as extraterrestrial biological beings or non-human intelligences. Traditionally, uh, mysticism interprets them perhaps as the highest order of angels or cosmic forces that sustain creation. In Kabbalah and Merkaba systems, mysticism, generally chariot mysticism, they are not physical creatures but spiritual entities connected to the divine. However, I'm going to look at this from a scientific standpoint as well. If I were an ancient individual and I had this vision, or I even really did see something in reality that I'd never seen before, it's kind of a very advanced technology, I would not know how to describe it. And I would do my best to describe it as realistically as possible, but also I may be influenced with some of the Jewish theology that's going on around the time. And so I'm doing my best to give a real interpretation of what I saw, in addition to that which I know, and I have a limited standpoint of this. I've certainly seen different descriptions and images of what Ezekiel's wheel looks like, and it could very much look like a spacecraft. No doubt about that. In reality, I don't know. I don't think anyone necessarily knows, and that's okay. That's okay to admit that we don't know. In fact, it's very brave. It's much braver, in my opinion, to say we don't know than to say it's absolutely a vision or absolutely it was a real UFO that would have been seen. From a standard speculative perspective, some people ask if intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe, could ancient prophets have encountered something beyond their understanding? And maybe this is a version of it. And this may be the best way that prophets may have been able to interpret something that was off world or extraterrestrial. They could go either way. And um, the fact that it is such a unique part of the Hebrew Bible, um, and the fact that we don't have a lot of other texts about any kind of ancient alien craft that leads people to want to believe. There's the idea I want to believe, and many people want to believe this theory as well. So, from my perspective, I think it's brave to say I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. Both are potential. It could have just been a vision. It could have been a real UFO. Um, uh, close encounter. I would love there to be. I'd love there to be some kind of secret understanding that this exists. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of evidence. There is no known point in Jewish history where rabbis taught that there was a galactic federation or had really contact with an interstellar alliance. That idea is more modern. But there are some clues if people want to interpret this way. So traditional Jewish thought often assumes that the universe is filled with many levels of existence. For instance, there are angels, perhaps spiritual messengers or forces. There are the holy living creatures in Ezekiel's vision. There's the Ophanim, heavenly beings associated with the divine chariot. The Serim, the spiritual princes or governing forces associated with nations or realms. Just worlds in general in Kabbalah, different levels of it. So perhaps a medieval rabbi or medieval Kabbalist might say creation is not empty space, it is filled with many forms of intelligence and existence. Now, this council of this galactic federation, some Jewish texts do sometimes describe a heavenly assembly, and if so, people want to reference that within Psalm 82. There's the idea of Hashem, that God stands in the divine assembly, and Job 1, the sons of God or sons of Hashem appear before God or Hashem, and then also in Kings, a vision of heavenly beings surrounding God. So some ancient interpretations imagine perhaps divine court or heavenly council, and if people want to say this is what the Galactic Federation is and was just referenced in ancient texts in as best a way as possible, then there's a potentiality of that. I want more information regarding this, but in terms of rabbinic literature and discussions, there isn't a secret group that has some kind of connection with an off-world entity aside from what I just read. Well, it is not considered part of direct Jewish canon, so it's not part of Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible, but it did have major influence on Judaism, specifically in the Second Temple period and into uh, the centuries thereafter. So basically, to give people an understanding, this book is originally written in Aramaic with possibly portions of Hebrew influence, and it's later translated into Greek and perhaps Ethiopian. And fragments were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which really lend, especially in the mid 20th century, much more increased uh, an increased desire in what was actually. The book consists of generally five major sections: the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, Dream Visions, and then the Epistle of Enoch. Enoch is within the Hebrew Bible, so it's not to say that he's not a individual. He's seen as the seventh person from Adam, perhaps seven generations uh, separated from Adam. And the idea is that this idea, many different ideas within it, but specifically what you referenced the Watchers. Who are these Watchers? They are angels assigned to watch over humanity, and instead they rebel. They have a leader, job, and with other leaders as well. Perhaps about 200 angels descend upon Mount Hermon. And this expands on this Genesis 6 or Bereshit 6 idea that the sons of God saw the daughters of men. Enoch expands on this directly, and since the angels desire human women, They marry them and they have children, and their children become giants. And then the discussion of the Nephilim occurs, that their offspring are enormous, that they have characteristics of immense strength, insatiable hunger, violence, destruction, and eventually they consume crops, animals, humans, and chaos spreads. Also, there's the idea of the fallen angel teaches forbidden acts. So, for instance, examples include Zazel, who teaches metallurgy, swords, armor, warfare, cosmetics. Judge teaches magic. Others teach writing or astrology, constellations, even poisons. The idea is not that knowledge itself is evil, but that divine knowledge was misused outside of its proper boundaries. So these are some of the takes that occur within the Book of Enoch, and there's a judgment of watchers who plead with Enoch and have to intercede. God refuses. Generally, though, the Book of Enoch within mainstream centrist Judaism is seen as perhaps apocryphal, but is not anything that uh, is is studied within our normal Talmud classes, our normal Chumash classes, or Torah or Tanakh classes. These are more, I would say, more people who have a desire from a Kabbalistic standpoint to learn more about what is perhaps going on within Judaism, just the world in general. Now, in terms of the Nephilim, which we referenced, uh, this is mentioned. I'd like to make the connection that the Nephilim are mentioned in Tanakh, which, for those who don't know, this is an acronym of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, translated Torah, prophets, and writings. Basically, the Hebrew Bible that people may be familiar with. Now, in terms of the Nephilim, the root is Nephal, which means to fall. And the gospel translations are fallen ones, those who have fallen, those who cause others to fall, violent ones, or even giants. So there's that idea as well. Now, we have the idea, perhaps, how many times do they occur? For those who aren't familiar with the Hebrew Bible, are they all over the place, or is it limited? It happens twice. The first in Bereshit or Genesis, in specifically the translation of Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of the and that's the first time that we see this. This is the first biblical occurrence of Nephilim. It appears immediately before the flood narrative. It does not explicitly define who the Nephilim are. The interpretation depends heavily on surrounding verses. And then the second occurrence occurs during Numbers, which is the book of the Hebrew Bible, Midbar, which means in the wilderness. The translation is that, and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Enoch. From the Nephilim, we were in our sight like grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Now, this is the second and final appearance that we find. It was spoken by the Israelite spies. There is a chronological tension within Bereshit or Genesis, and it's often interpreted as exaggeration and comparison. Now, the question emerges: how did the Nephilim exist after the flood? Because within Genesis, there's the idea that places them before the flood, and Numbers references them after the flood, and the text does not resolve this issue. The classical explanations of this are that the spies use legendary language to describe fear. There's a comparison theory that the Anakim were compared to legendary Nephilim, and there's the descendant theory. Later groups preserve the name or reputation. From a rabbinic approach, the sons of God could be rulers or nobles, and the Nephilim were the violent human elites. So they were not extraterrestrial. From a traditional rabbinic approach, this preserves strict monotheism and avoids angelic reproduction, and it focuses on human moral comparison. Now, there's the Second Temple tradition, which some ancient writings interpret sons of God as angels or Nephilim as giant offspring. This is found in Enochic literature, which we referenced, and it's influential, but it's not universal within Judaism. And then moving into the Book of Enoch more, as we previously stated, it is important to know it was preserved among Dead Sea Scrolls, and it introduces this Watcher's narrative. What we really find is that from an academic view, uh, traditions here. They're possibly legendary heroic figures. There are parallels that exist in Near Eastern literature, and Genesis preserves only fragments. There are other discussions that occur that many times people connect the Anunnaki. This is discussed as a divine council of figures. It's not identical to the Nephilim. This is a more Mesopotamian idea, and it's not referenced within the Hebrew Bible. Also, within Greek stories or Greek tradition, demigods, divine human offspring things, no direct link necessarily to the Nephilim. From a rabbinic Judaism standpoint, we emphasize that the Nephilim were of moral corruption, human responsibility, and divine judgment. There are some theories in the modern age that propose these were advanced beings of extraterrestrial origin or concept, but these are not found in ancient Hebrew text. So, kind of to summarize, they mentioned twice, at least within the Hebrew Bible, perhaps as references to giants. Some traditions say that it's the angels, and then they have much more of the role, perhaps, within the book of. That's an excellent question. And there are parallels there. Excellent. Well, before we do so, may I please just kind of tie up the Chaim Eshed development that happened last month with an interview that he had? Yes, thank you. And also to the point that you made, I'd love to meet with you again in the future, perhaps multiple times, or a series if need be. And I'd love to have these types of conversations with you. So, with that being said, I am very excited for that opportunity. Uh, in terms of Chaim Eshed and what happened with him after December 2020? It's an excellent question that many people had. I had. What happened to this old man who made all of these claims? Did he just disappear? And if so, why did he disappear? So, in answer to that, yes, he did disappear. After November 2020, we didn't hear anything about him really until June of 2026, which is just serendipitous that we had this event happen just last month. And additionally, we're celebrating the 79th anniversary of Roswell this month, which is serendipitous as well. And specifically, this event happened on June 10th, 2026. Chaim Eshed met with Uri Geller. For those who don't know, Uri Geller is also in a really many people have associated him with the supernatural and his delving into that. address public inquiry. And for those who may want this information and don't speak Hebrew or don't have a translation, this interview was in English, which is helpful. And used by technology. And they've had thousands of inquiries regarding Shed's multi-year sentence following his controversial 2020 revelations. And I gotta say, what I had suspected happened potentially that there was a Men in Black encounter. As Shed attributes his withdrawal to a visit from mysterious, untraceable figure at his apartment. Individuals demonstrated personal knowledge of his life and sensitive topics, including the as Shed chose to cease public discourse on the subject following this encounter until he consulted with others, including him, which is absolutely fascinating that perhaps he was threatened, perhaps he just felt more comfortable staying quiet. But then there's an interesting thing. Now, at 87, he went quiet, and now at 93, he feels comfortable to come back and talk about it. Because one of the things that I found very interesting with his discussion with Uri Geller is that he doesn't take any step back on what he stated. He still believes that there's a galactic federation, he doesn't stand on it, which I find to be of extreme interest as well. Because he could have very easily said, oh, my words were being misinterpreted, or that this all got out of control, or that there were mistranslations of my book or of my interview. That's not what I meant. But he doesn't do that at all. He doubles down on it and says that he was potentially threatened. And with that, perhaps the next time we meet, there'll be other developments. He is 93 years old, so perhaps he is moving towards the latter stages of his life. But from the interview that he does, he still speaks of his sound mind and speaks very good English as well. So anyone who wants to see that directly, I recommend looking up Uri Geller and Chaim Ashed's interview. With that being said, yes, I do stream my 24/7, 365 for world, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about what I do and why I do. This is essentially a Truman Show or a Big Brother. It's a timeline and a time capsule of human achievement and human existence. I started this during the pandemic when my role, in addition to being a rabbi, I'm a certified project management professional. I'm an app developer. I successfully launched apps on the App Store, Google Play, and been a Scrum Master who worked with development teams and software. And my position went from going into work every day in the suit and tie to being remote. And so I went from someone who was going to synagogue 3 times a day and black hat, black suit, all of that, to now living this digital world or and having some type of social media footprint. And my days went from being on camera from 0 hours a day to anywhere between 8 hours for work and 2 or 3 or 4 for different services that I went and classes that I was taking. And eventually became, I would say, much more comfortable on camera than I was previously. And my anxiety of being on camera so much was really lessened, that I had the opportunity to basically have more than half of my day already on camera. And I felt like I'm not doing anything that's so secretive, and why not just give people access to the other part of my day? And I had Truman Show and the television show Big Brother, and I thought, you know what, this was always something that had been hypothesized that something like this may occur. What if I do it, but instead of it being against my consent or with no consent in the case of Truman Burbank and the Truman Show, I give my consent. And what would happen with them? Alongside my knowledge of software and just information technology, I had learned that data in 2017 had overtaken petroleum as Earth's #1 resource, according to The Economist, which always stuck out in my mind that data could have a major impact on society. And this could potentially be a really great opportunity to give myself a platform to be able to promote positivity, to be able to promote world peace, to be able to promote ending world hunger through the use of technology, such as agricultural drones, floating greenhouses, saltwater greenhouses, hydroponics, vertical farming, clouds. These are things that I'd like to see over the course of the next generation or two, and certainly into the coming centuries to be able to eradicate world hunger, to be able to eradicate world thirst using technologies like the digging of wells or the kind of process known as desalination technology. And I thought, you know what, if I am already so comfortable being on camera, why not only stream what I do, but archive it for people in the future? I started streaming in fall of 2021. Though before then, I was archiving my life on just aspects of my life specifically. This all started, I wanted to see what my golf swing looked like. And so I'd make little jokes to myself and I'd upload those videos to the cloud, not public by any means, for my potential future family, God willing, one day to be able to see what the dear old dad was like before he met their mother, before they were even a gleam in my eye, and to see a little aspect of what life was like during the pandemic. And that was taking me a long time, just from downloading the information, re-uploading the information. I thought there's got to be a better way, and there is. It's streaming. So in fall of 2021, my first YouTube account, my first Twitch account, and many other social media platforms, I very quickly recognized that if I want to do this 24-hour day undertaking, I need to do it on more than just one device. I need to have redundant streams. I need to have backups because app crashes disconnects happen, and all of the other technological issues that occur. So what I ended up doing was buying over 33 different devices, everything from platforms to tablets, iPhones, Android devices, you name it, and giving myself the opportunity to put cameras all around myself, which I think is really interesting. And I'll show people when they want to view what my life is like. You can literally go back for the last more than 4 years, nearly 5 years, and like most every second of every moment of my life. And the way that you can do this is by typing into YouTube Rabbi Rothschild and filtering by live. And for anyone who has the opportunity to do that, what you will see is more data than you've ever seen of any individual ever. So what we have here, we type Rabbi Rothschild, and the key is we want to filter by live. And when we do that, you're going to see more cameras than you've ever seen on an individual ever from all different angles. We have side angles, we have ceiling cameras, we have side, certainly straight on cameras, whatever you want to do or however you want to do, you have the opportunity. And this, I think, is a really interesting opportunity, perhaps for AI to be able to study humanity from multiple angles. And I recognize that I was doing this project over a year before large language models became even known in mainstream society. I was an early adopter of ChatGPT in November of 2022 and a user in November 30th, 2022 when it launched. So I've been able to see the birth or in its own way, the birth of AI from a public standpoint that's really taken over our daily lives. I've been able to see the launches of certainly Gemini and Claude and Perplexity and Rock, you name it, and how they've improved. I've been able to see the transition of when you were able to very easily jailbreak ChatGPT to now that it's much more closed off system. We've been able to tell the story, not just of my life, but also of the birth of AI, which I think is really interesting. Moreover, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I keep a radio on in the background. So you literally can go back to any moment of my life over the course of the last more than 4 years, almost 5 years, and know what was going on in world history. And I feel this is going to be very interesting for the people of the future to be able to study from a timeline or time capsule type of medium. It's essentially in a previous generation, I would have been a journalist, someone who writes in a journal, or a diarist, someone who writes in the diary. But I just use video as a way to capture this information. We've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between. We've seen Olympic Games and World Cups and every kind of sporting event. We've watched most every kind of movie and film and documentary out there. Listened to every major album of every major artist. This is really a compendium of human existence. And not only am I telling the story of my life, not only are we telling world history, but it's an opportunity for AI to be able to learn about human behavior, to be able to learn about eating habits, sleeping habits, certainly circadian rhythms, the human psyche. I think it's very interesting as well that we'll be able to study micro behaviors, especially because I have so many different angles, cameras from so many different angles to be able to study humanity. And I think another really interesting aspect of this is that which we can't even predict yet. Once once the ability for AI to be able to timestamp every single video that I have and to put it in all the major languages that we have, what can we learn from this? And perhaps we'll be able to zoom in. We'll be able to enhance the quality. We'll be able to enhance the sound. Everything will be translated. It's essentially a modern day Bible. It's been described. I'm not comparing it with that, but it's one way that the Bible tells the story of the Jewish people. This stream tells the story of my life within Judaism, and do my best to be open to people. So for anyone out there who is like, well, I forgot your life and that's cool, but I want to communicate with you, you can do so 24 hours a day in my Discord, which is discord.me/rabbi. I have people who live alongside me who have been inspired by this journey that we're on, who now stream their own lives in there. So I'm not alone in this endeavor. I've been going for more than 1,700 days. This is a huge amount of data that will eventually be discovered by the masses. I will go viral. And when I do, I want to give back to all the people who have helped me along the way. I want to push for disclosure. I talk about futurism in ways that many people haven't heard before. Things like anti-gravity, antimatter, faster than light travel, faster than light communication. Certainly things like terraforming of other planets, space elevators, space tourism, a Bering Strait tunnel, clearing of the Darien Gap, a Gibraltar Bridge, perhaps, the idea of a transatlantic tunnel, connecting people, universal translators, artificial general intelligence, artificial neural intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, teleportation, telekinesis, telepathy. I talk about things like Santa Claus machines, which are replicators. Think of a 3D printer that's not just connected to plastic, but all of the different elements in the periodic table that can make whatever you want. I talk about things like the extinction. Many people don't know this, but the first successful gate extinction took place in the year 2003 with Irene Ibex, which is a goat located in northern Spain, southern France. Fast forward to the year 2021, a company out of Dallas, Texas, founded known as Colossal Bioscientific. They made recent headlines with their direwolf hybrids. Following that project, they want to really reintroduce the woolly mammoth into the Arctic Circle within the next 2 years, which will, to me, I don't know why more people are thinking about such a scientific innovation. They want to do this using Asian elephant surrogates. Following the reintroduction of the woolly mammoth in the Arctic Circle, they're going to reintroduce the Tasmanian tiger, followed by the dodo bird. These are fascinating topics that you're not going to hear everywhere else. Moreover, I talk about life extension technology. When we were born, the average life expectancy for you and most of the audience was probably about 80 years old. We're moving into a new generation where we may be living 120,000 perhaps even reverse age, utilize types of technologies like gene therapy, human growth hormone, stem cells, cryonics, cryogenics, peptides, nootropics, cold shock therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, you name it, we're going to be living longer. At least people on Earth are going to be living longer. We have that discussion of certainly transhumanism and perhaps revivification technology, and moving into the idea of mind uploading technology, where with someone's consent, and I say this is all with someone's consent, but if they want, you may in the future be able to scan your brain into a computer like a CAT scan or an MRI, knowing where every atom is system in your peripheral nervous system for later download. As an android, an avatar, a cyborg, a cybernetic being, a clone of yourself, a robot, a computer being, whatever you want to be. But essentially what I'm saying to you and saying to the audience is that we are in the precipice of something unique here. That's the idea of a digital immortality. These are just some of the topics that we talk about in addition to the push for alien disclosure, and the galactic federation, and all of the things that we covered. I find this to be a fascinating project that to which I've dedicated my life. And it's just a matter of time. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I've streamed as far north as Santa Barbara, as far south as San Diego, as far east as the desert mountains, as far west as the Pacific Ocean. I've streamed in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, Disney, everywhere in Southern California. And I'd like to take this project to the world. I'd like to give people eventually a first-person view of what a human life is like for as long as I can live. And I think people will be able to study this, learn more that we have much more that unifies us than that which divides us. that we may not be alone in the cosmos to try to answer the big questions that exist. And my life is a dedication to that. So if anybody's looking, how can you find me? As I showed previously, Rabbi Rothschild in YouTube filter by life. You'll see more content than you've ever seen of any creator ever. I can say that bar none. Moreover, I have more social media than any person ever. I have over 100 YouTube accounts, over 200 Instagram accounts, over 500 Twitch accounts, over 1,000 TikTok accounts, over 2,000 Twitter accounts, over 5,000 Blue Sky accounts, over 10,000 TikTok accounts, and more social media than any person ever. This is going to be a treasure trove for the future of humanity to be able to say. Moreover, I write regularly, so you can find my writings at rabbirothschild.com. I don't just write on religious topics, I write on certainly justice topics, social justice, technological topics, whatever it is that I find of interest, that other people find of interest, I'm writing about it. So I'm always creating content, and it's just a matter of time until enough people hear about what I do and this project. It's going to go viral, and in its own way, it may be one of the biggest events in global history. And when that occurs, God willing, we're going to push the disclosure aspect of it as well. So with that, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and we will consider this part one, perhaps future parts in the future where we will connect and talk about all of those things that you referenced earlier. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to thank you, and I'm going to thank your audience. Excellent. Do you mind if I send you my relevant websites that you could put in the description that you said? Absolutely. And then we'll let a little bit of time go, and then we'll reconnect and schedule something else. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for the opportunity. You're a wonderful interview. Okay. Absolutely. Oh, I thought it was all right. Really? Yeah. He's a really nice person. Very smart. Very smart. Impressively smart. Yeah. You're impressive individual. You have to agree. Absolutely. It could have been much more challenging. He could have he stuck to what he wanted to listen, which I thought was important. anybody watching this, it's like you always talk to yourself afterward. Um, well, I do my best. But anybody watching, but I brief myself on this thing because I feel it's important to be able uh, to, to learn. What would that happen? There's always something you can always learn. So what would it be? I probably would have a little bit more, but it's not like I didn't know what I was referencing. So that's when, but it's just a big, it's a large amount of information to learn. Are you happy? Are you happy with it? Could it have gone better? Um, I don't know what it was, but like, there were parts where I couldn't always feel the same. And just that part now, no matter what, probably. So I've got to say, I was great. He knows the topics well that we were referencing. Yeah. Is there anything you would like to talk about more? How about that? You might ask. What did we talk about? I talk about myself. I mean, so it was cool. It was cool that he let me fill out tweets on all my different streams. And, um, yeah, interview tomorrow. I lack the confidence that I should have. Like, in two topics. One, I should be fine. It's whether I think I'm professional enough. Pictures. I don't want to talk right because I don't know. That's such a big about it. So, I'm like, I'm about these kind of topics that are like that's a difficult one, and I feel I kind of almost blew it because he's like, I was like, so what is this about? Yeah, you know, don't do it. Don't do stuff. Never, you were never someone who ever thought you could podcast that way. But you listen to podcasts almost exclusively. Like you don't watch TV. What's the last TV clip? I mean, maybe like turn on the TV. Doesn't happen. Why? Um, I feel how a nice person put in their pocket, but happy and what you would oh, I didn't mention my mood. That is something that's this is because well, I mean, there's one time we had a neighbors on you guys. So I like basically surrounded by people. And next door to them, they have two daughters my age. I don't understand because I remember I still think those girls keep up my house. Sort of but I just remember how much time each of these things actually like. And when you hear the huge girls, I don't know her name. Never. They were so nice. And I would be like, little. So, that's what my mind is. I just remember. I, was always anyway. I haven't heard about that shit. I was Really? Why? Why aren't you? Oh, they. I think we're from the second. We were looking. But I don't remember seeing your mom. I'm sure it's my mom. But she used to stand out in the Monday. My friends. Whoa. I know. Dude, you were super hot. All the boys were like, "There, girls." What would have ended up happening? Who your parents were. I would have ended up getting really close to them. Yeah. Would have been sure. Which one? They, they were the same. She had they were both when I they probably got similar things. But when you see something just seems like they have beautiful existence. I'm not get the flash and one of those that they put out. They just seem like they love each other. I don't remember the even though we lived. Okay, I think about it. They were always doing something. What do you do? And I, we're gonna hook up if we hang out. You wait to me, you know, milk roll, hopscotch, and chalk. But I remember the girl would play basketball and be like, "Oh, I got." I remember he said like he didn't play basketball. She got older. She was much closer to her sister. So why? I would have ended up hooking up with her. So I think that what happened. They were so nice. I just remember picking them. Do you guys know that I'm not allowed to eat for still in school? And you before. Really? I didn't even know. I kind of remember like that, but I haven't seen it. But I'm sure. And yeah, there were two girls. There were two houses. There were like four girls. All of them. And I remember this girl. I thought she was and her single mom. She was. Uh, I never knew her name. Really let me like the house. I don't know. They were just hanging out there. Nobody cared for her. And I found this. We thought I had this bed. I just went there and sat in the corner. And it becomes like my routine. I could never like look at what is going so like, and I to this day have no idea what she looks like. But it's like a home improvement for those. And then the people that door, people, and there's me. I would this look at how she how the doctor and it's here. And what is it? I see a whole bunch of I want to say I was there like the first time I was here. And but maybe she I want to say she I want to say she was a little bit like what do you think? But I think about the flag, I think about I think about them way they were always going to the worst and I, I hope you know, I'm sure they'll go. Why are you sure that? Is there anything? I just think that way to play with them. What was the I had said, I don't know anything about it. It was just like one time ever What do you think about it? They would have been, they would have been there. They just seem like they've never beautiful.
Ready to start tonight's fucking fucking show. Well. Thank God, I might be one of the best fucking comedy members on planet Earth because when I smell talent, I attack it. It's always been that way. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you two of the best goddamn comedians on planet Earth and two of our favorite guests in the history of the show. Two of my funniest friends. Make some noise for Dan Soder. New York. On 9/11, they were saving people, pulling them from the buildings. Oh, how about I holy everybody? I mean, holy shit. Right with the sausage, he's got a little tin sausage. Here she is to add a little feminine energy, some good mojo. Everybody, and Gina, A.H.G. It's the worst Instagram handle of all time. Completely on the worst marketing of all time for a hot chick, literally. Gina is not even her name. Her name is Heidi, and her Instagram is Gina with A's, not H.G. Yeah, that makes no sense. They're called Gina all night.
It's almost handles the Wi-Fi password.
Yeah, right. No, it really is. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys. Welcome. We have one more special treat, ladies and gentlemen. One of the greatest band members in the history of the show is here joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, you know her, you love her. This is the great Steve Johnson. And she also plays the horn, but she has a life link and is absolutely phenomenally hilarious. And when she is, she's this party afterwards, everybody goes, you guys get it? Do it. You louder than I'm trying to. There you go.
I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. You'll see what happens in action. She's a fucking little sniper.
Y'all personalities.
And there you go, motherfuckers. Absolutely. Other than that, you guys know how it works. Over 200 souls signed up for the opportunity to rap for 60 seconds on this stage. We'll let this little hanger fucking go first. And while we wrangle the first weekend, and as you know, 60 seconds, you know, their time is up and you're the center of the game. And then we talk to them about anything that may happen in their lives, what makes them interested, or what might be funnier for them to talk about. The whole thing's improvised. Anything can happen. Are you guys ready to start tonight's fucking show? While we grab the our fucking phones, we have a regular on this show. He has been starting every episode for the last 3 weeks. He's an absolute fucking sensation, a local icon, a comics comic, and also a famous comic. Absolute freak of nature, a bundle of energy, a power source. He literally is like a solar panel. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the great hour of 60 seconds uninterrupted from Casey Rocket.
The world is moving. Very cool. Awesome. I'm ready for two tonight, boys. I'm pregnant. Cool. Yeah. Nights like this, I wish I was still covered in mud. I'm a predator, you know what I mean? So when you get close to it, see what it is. I gotta get out of here. I got a date tonight. Her name, Hot Sink. What's your location? Casual and anonymous. Strings attached.
here. Hello. He's also running for mayor. Pleasure is all mine, Tony. Happy to be here in the 21st district of Austin today. Absolutely. In the moment, while agreeing to Jack the Ripper, some people thought we got a lot of these nicknames with Cal Ripken Jr. and Ricky Longstockings, the boy who riffs. Brown Band? Riffy Jr. Riffy Jr. Yeah. Cool. Riff Raff. Yeah. Mom's just riff. Yes. Riffs. It's what's for dinner. Yeah. Strokes for different folks. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, Red Band got excited on that one. So what's been on Casey Rock and really good? Been good. I was in Chicago Thursday, Wisconsin Friday, Raleigh yesterday. Been going around. Been going good. So we're doing that. Philly tomorrow. Hell yeah. Class. Wow. Around the Valley yesterday. Raleigh wasn't. The interesting thing about Casey is that, and I don't want to really blow your cover or get too personal, but you're sober, right? Sober for years. There's some residual stuff going on for sure. Seriously. You can get sober from that. That's perfect. It doesn't appear as if though you did do enough drugs to just last. Right away, if Tracy can ask your personal question, absolutely. Something. Yeah, we used to either I guess, yeah. Right in the water, let it Atheist. Atheist. Say Caseyist. Your fans. Atheist. You're in Chicago on and I guess you do any animals and eat them.
Jeez, Jesus Christ almighty. God damn. That Chinaman area scared you.
Jesus, that was like you're trying to show anger.
this time. Your first bucket pull of the night, getting 60 seconds uninterrupted, goes by the name of Raul Sanchez. And here we go.
Thank you. I like drinking, man. Makes me a pleasant human being. Sometimes I get a little too fucked up, though. Like, one time I got so drunk, I caught myself speeding on the highway because I confused the number of the highway with the speed limit sign. I was like, 97, fuck. That was pretty specific, no? Now that I better go 92 just to be safe. You know how the cops are around here, man. You guys never got that fucked up? Dude, one time I was at a bar, I got hammered, right? I started talking to this chick, and we hit it off, right? So I decided to buy one of those condoms from the machines in the bathroom. Yeah, and then later that night, we were about to get it on. I opened it up, and it was 2 Advil. But I was so drunk, I was like, man, technology's come a long way.
Gracious. Raul Sanchez has arrived, ladies and gentlemen. An unbelievable minute.
Yes, my turn.
Oh my goodness. Now, Raul, I know you. You're a fucking great comedian from Dallas, am I correct?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, that's right. You were on the show there, correct?
No.
No?
No, this is my first time.
But I know you from, how did you end up opening
I opened for you in Cap City when I used to live here.
That's right.
And you were coming down here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had you do it a few times after that, right?
Yeah, a couple of times. I think 2 or 3 times I featured.
Because you're fucking hilarious.
I appreciate
Look
it.
at you.
Thanks.
I love it. Now you're making a big scare.
That was great.
Yeah, man.
That was killer. You're really good, and this in true Mexican fashion, you're gonna take our jobs.
Yeah, it is true. Dan.
What I love about Raul is it feels like you're just hanging out with a dude you work with that you get drunk with, and you're like, dude, Raul's fucking hilarious. You're like, you hear him talk about highways? It's fucking nuts.
It's all the landscaping guys get together. Yeah. Right.
And then they call him gay for being too funny.
Right.
Tell me about it. So, Raul, you're a freak of nature. How long have you been doing stand-up?
13 years.
13 motherfucking years.
All right.
I love that. I love that people that have been doing it that long sign up for the show. You come here, you fucking flex, you showcase your goddamn skills, and now look at you. You're right here, absolutely thriving in the mix. How do you make a living? Just from stand-up?
Stand-up, and I also get disability from the VA.
Oh, wow. You're a veteran.
Yeah. I did 4 years in the Army.
Mexican Army?
Airborne infantry.
Sorry.
You were in the Air Force?
Oh, no, airborne infantry. It's
Oh.
about our plane.
Okay.
Oh, boy, the
All
migrants are getting good.
Yeah.
They're airdropping them.
Yep. That's a way to get over the fence. Incredible. So what were you doing? You were jumping out of planes?
Then, well, not in country. Once we were in, like, Iraq and Afghanistan, there was a lot of, like, just busted people's doors.
Hell yeah.
I feel like if someone from the Army was here, they'd go like, hey, no. We were kicking doors down and fucking people up. And they're like,
I love it. So, but sometimes you would